Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Code 3 at Depot Street. Truck boy at request.
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome to Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and with me is Jacob Litton. Week 1 is in the books. Lions defeated the Los Angeles Rams 26-20. Jacob and I are going to give our views on that. It's our first recap of a regular season game, so I'm super excited about it. I know Jacob is too. He's had a long day of working. I've had a long day of not working. No, I did a lot of stat research.
Nothing at all.
Before we get started, I want to thank actually one of my old college roommates. I haven't talked to him in quite a while. Reached out to me on Facebook to tell me that we were doing a good job on the podcast. So his name's Jason, and I just wanted to thank you for that. He said that his son is in IU hockey, and they were doing Lion Squares. He referenced our podcast and put our name out there. So I want to thank him for that. That was cool. And it's always good to hear from someone you haven't talked to in a while. And especially nice to hear good things about your podcast. I really appreciated that. It made me happy. But now we're going to get back to the game. So we thought we'd start out with our thoughts from different perspectives. I was inside the stadium. Jacob was at home. I think each perspective gives you a different view of the game. Jacob's listening to the commentators at home. I'm just, kind of viewing it in the stadium. So it's kind of an interesting thing. As Jacob and I are texting back and forth, we're both garnering information about what they're saying. I'm getting from what he's hearing at home. I'm looking at, injured players are on the sideline. He's texting me, what's going on.
We got a good thing going, man. I like the back and forth. I have intel inside. I let you know what the announcers are saying, what's going on. You let me know who's got helmets on, who's being carted, where they're at.
Yeah, there was the JMO one was the scary one, right? You're in commercial break, so I get to see him walk. So I text him. I'm like, he's walking under his own power. And then my wife, who's awesome at the game, she's great with the binoculars. She's looking at the sideline. I'm asking her, does he have his helmet? She's like, he's got his helmet. He's bouncing around. I'm like, okay, well, that's a good thing. He's not limping. She says, he's putting his gloves back on. I text Jacob. I'm like, he's good to go. And then he was back in a couple plays later. So it's a really kind of neat thing that you and I have going on. I really like that little back and forth that we have in the game.
That was terrible for me, though. He, obviously that would have been worst case scenario. He goes down, they cut right to commercial break. And I texted you immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me he got back up.
He was down for quite a while, even in the commercial break. So I don't know how fast on the TV. I watched the condensed version, so they kind of didn't really show the whole broadcast.
It felt like
see
forever.
That part. But it felt like forever in the stadium, too. But then when he got up, I was like, okay, thank God. Because he was walking ahead of the trainers, and that's what I text you. I'm like, he's walking ahead of the trainers. I think he's okay. As far as my thoughts from inside the game, my last game that I went to was the Rams playoff game. And so I was used to this level of loudness, and I was kind of anticipating it to reach that level. I don't think it quite got there. It was still really loud and rambunctious and still really intense, but it just didn't get up to the playoff level. Stakes weren't as high. Obviously, stakes were at the highest last year. Win or go home. It was good, but it wasn't as intense, I thought. So I was preparing for something louder. I thought we might break the decibel record. I know St. Brown said something about that. We were going to break the record, but as far as I know, we didn't. At least the numbers they showed on the screen weren't. They were in the highest I saw was get 120.
Which is pretty loud.
Oh, it was loud. There's no doubt about it. Another thought that I had just, watching the game as it was going on, Sean McVay showed why he's an offensive genius. He knew the limitations on his team and, just took advantage of it. Quick passing. You could just see that Stafford was getting one read and getting it out. So inside the stadium, you could see that. And you just see Stafford just, making amazing play after amazing plays. I'm glad with our boy Jared Goff, but Stafford still showed that he's got it for sure. What did you get from the home version? I mean, could you tell it was loud? I mean, what was the feeling there?
Yeah, you definitely, I mean, when you're watching home, you can still tell it's loud. Even when the referees are trying to make calls, or you can, the Rams start off the game with the ball, it's loud. It's funny because then, they go 3 and out and flip it over to the Lions, and then you can tell, okay, it's quieter now. Now you can actually hear everything. The crowd actually, calmed down a little bit when the Lions were on offense. So that was cool because then you really can tell, that the noise level is making an impact.
It made me think of something like, I think Lions fans in general are just getting smarter about when to cheer and when not to cheer. Last year, it seemed like people would start like, let's go Lions chants right in the middle when the Lions have the ball. Or I'm thinking of a couple years ago where they were doing the wave while the Lions have the ball. Not smart things to do in general.
Right.
And there was a lot of times when people would start making some noise, people were just shushing them. And it got fairly quiet while the Lions had the ball. So I was really happy with that difference between last year and this year. Is there any other thoughts that you had?
It's kind of like what I was saying before, though, where, because I'm watching at home, I kind of get the stats in real time, some of the analysis, some of the things like that. And obviously it jumped off right away how quick Stafford was getting rid of the ball. And they came up with that statistic pretty quick. I think it was before the end of the first half that it was like 2.6 seconds or something like that from snap to throw, which was the fastest that has ever been in his career. And I don't know, they might have listed like if that was like top 5, fastest for a half of all time or something like that. But I mean, it felt like it, which was exactly what they needed to happen because they did not have any time at all. And they knew they weren't going to have any time.
Right. I think, people that are frustrated that we didn't get a ton of sacks or anything like that. I mean, it was evident that they weren't going to hold on to the ball. And Stafford, 16-year vet, knew what to do. He didn't hold the ball. He got rid of it as quick as possible. You get a younger quarterback in there, they would not have done that. They would have fell down the ball and got a lot more sacks.
They had to a few times let some plays develop, and they really, it felt like only had maybe 3 or 4 clean plays, and they, didn't execute a whole lot on those either. Hutchinson had 11 quarterback pressures that game, which was actually tied for first in the league. And just outside of him, the other defensive line also showed up. We talked about that with the questions in the game is, were we going to be able to exploit their offensive line? We definitely did. I know maybe the actual sacks didn't jump out, but that was a big thing for us. That was one of the keys to the game, and I think we executed that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the defense later on in our breakdown, but you're exactly right. It may not show in the statistical sense, but if you watch that game, I mean, the line did affect that. They had to get the ball out really quickly, and they did not get their deep passing game going. So the next section that we want to go through is just some general game stats. Jacob already dropped one, and just some thoughts about the game, just overall in general, before we get into the offense and then the defense. Was there any general game thoughts that you had or stats that you thought were interesting for the game?
Outside of the defensive line stats, I mean, what was really apparent to me pretty early on is that the offense was rusty, and it kind of made me change my stance about, should they have played in the preseason. I didn't think it was very necessary, but after seeing how the game came, how the first couple drives went, I don't think it was necessarily the Rams defense that was preventing us from working those plays. It just felt like the timing or something was off. Maybe it was kind of the first game nerves or something like that, but I feel like maybe if they did have a drive or two in the preseason, maybe some of those things could have been worked out a little bit earlier.
I know you were working today, so you might not have seen it. Campbell was asked that exact question today in the press conference. Did he regret not having, played his starters in the preseason? And he said, no. He said, we would have, got 20 extra plays. We got 60 in our preseason scrimmage. So he goes, I'd rather have them play those 60 plays. And, he basically alluded to it's week 1. There's always going to be things that don't run perfect. Yes, I think you could have some benefit from playing in the preseason. But even in the preseason, you're playing, we wouldn't necessarily be playing against the other team's starters. What are we going to gain from that?
They could have with KC, Kansas City.
True. And that's true. You're 100% right. In Kansas City, they play their starters and they won week 1, but we also won week 1. We can second guess all day. I'm going to side with Dan Campbell on this if that's what he, truly believes. But I think it's a good point. It's a good thought, and obviously the reporter thought it was a good question to ask. One of the things that was very evident in the game was there's a lot of motion and with their receiver going back and forth, mostly Cooper Kupp. And so per NFL Pro, this was an amazing. Cooper Kupp had 42 snaps and 12 touches when he was in motion. It was the most by any player in the last 7 seasons, which, just shows they were trying to get Cooper Kupp any which way he's open because they knew that they were not going to have time and they just had to try to get him any degree of separation. And then going to the whole game, counting the Lions, out of the 125 plays in the game, 116 had a player in motion. It was the most, in 7 years, I believe. I know motion's a big thing in the NFL right now, but you could say last night, both teams were trying to use it to their best advantage.
Which is interesting because obviously from the Rams perspective, you know what you're dealing with. You know that you're not going to have time to throw the ball. You've got to try to make sure that you have to know the defense. You have to read that defense ahead of time because Stafford only has one read. He's got one option that he's going to. He's got a check down option, but from the Lions perspective, it's different. We didn't necessarily have to do that. So that's interesting to see. Is that going to be the case going forward? Are we always going to be using the motion like that? It's not a bad idea. I'm actually surprised that more teams aren't doing that it was, as high as it was, or I guess that was a uncommon thing to be using motion that much.
My own thought about it is in week 1, we didn't see any of the Rams play their starters. They didn't see any of us play our starters. So they're trying to figure things out on the fly. And one of the best ways to read that coverage is move them around, right? So you could kind of see how the defense shifts and stuff like that. And I think as the season gets later on, there's more tape out there. You're going to use motion in certain instances when you need to figure out if they're trying to disguise something or you're trying to isolate a player and try to get them wide open. But, it's going to be, it was just interesting. And I mean, you think about the player, how much they're moving in week 1, that's going to tire them out even more. That's a lot of extra movement for a player.
Right. But that's also why, especially early on, you would use someone like JMO or Khalif Raymond to try to start the motion. Or, they're rotating around. I know Amon-Ra plays in the slot a lot, so he was in motion. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he was moving in motion as well. So, right.
Yep.
It's a good point. You don't want to tire him out doing stuff like that, but
I mean, it just shows you how good Cooper Kupp is, especially after Nakua went out. He's in motion on 42 snaps, so he's running before the play even goes 42 times. That's crazy.
He looked like it at the end of the game, too. By overtime, he gave it everything he had.
Well, I think, overtime, I guess we can get that later on, but overtime, I'm just really glad that we won that coin toss.
Yeah,
because
right.
Both teams were gassed, I think,
Did you see
on the defensive side.
In the post game, Dan Campbell, he's giving out, he said, Jared, however he worded it, he's like, we won the coin toss. Good job, Goff, or good job, Jared, or whatever he'd said.
Yeah. They showed a funny thing was like when they won the toss, they panned over to Dan Campbell and he had the biggest smile
right
on his
away.
face.
Yes. I saw that live on TV. That was great.
That's going to be a meme forever because it was just.
I was surprised it wasn't already over Twitter.
So the only other thing that general thought that I have on the game was the footing was weird. Like it was weird to see the players fall so many times. I was really baffled by that. It was both on the offensive and defensive side, and we're on home field. It's obviously a turf field, and as opposed to what we saw on Thursday night, where it was just a bad field in general, and that's why people were losing their footing. So I was baffled by that. And Dan Campbell addressed that in his press conference today, too. They asked if anything happened with the field or were we trying to something different with spikes, and he couldn't come up with anything. But maybe it's because the field hadn't been played on in a while. I'm not sure. It was weird to see our players slip so many times on an artificial surface like that.
It did. It happened too frequently, way more than what you would want. We kind of have a bad reputation for our field anyway, so that didn't help.
We got a new field, like not this season, but last season to kind of like it had more cushion or whatever, supposed to prevent some of those injuries. and they're going to need multiple years to figure out if that's truly the data there to support that we don't have as many injuries. But yeah, if to have the players slip like that, not ideal, and it had the potential to cost us huge.
Right.
I didn't notice the Rams player slipping as much.
I actually didn't either. And I mean, that was something that really jumped out watching it on TV. It's like, man, it just seemed like we kept losing our footing. I don't know what the reason that would be either. If they're able to handle it, but we're not, I don't know. Nah.
Yeah. No.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all. Because
Maybe it was a
we would
fluke.
know exactly what type of cleats to use on our own field. We played on there plenty of times. All right. Let's get down into our offense and defense breakdown. We're going to start with the offense. First thing I'm going to talk about, every breakdown that we have, I'm going to start with these three statistics. So red zone, third down efficiency, and turnovers. Those things will affect every game, and those are the things that I'm going to look at first. So for our offense, we got in the red zone 4 times. We scored 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. So we scored each time we got down there. Obviously, you want more touchdowns, but at least we were able to put points on the board. Our third down efficiency, we went 6 for 13. And on fourth down, we only went for it once this game, and we got it. And we had 1 turnover in the game. Any thoughts on any of that, Jacob?
No, I mean, obviously, we have a reputation of going for it on fourth down, but I just don't think very many of those opportunities came up in this one. It was too far away. The timing wasn't right. There just wasn't a need to go for it on fourth down unnecessarily.
Yep. I agree.
Obviously, the third down conversion is kind of, middle of the pack. It's not exactly where you want it to be. We got to do better. But, I mean, the offense as a whole kind of fell flat. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I agree. The third down efficiency did concern me. Some of that was just the inability to get it to Amon-Ra and Laporta, and whatever the Rams were doing to stop them. That was pretty big because obviously this was one of Amon-Ra's worst games as a professional, probably the worst game that he's had.
Yeah.
So that all affected it. And whether it's just week 1, again, this is week 1. All teams, like even throughout September, you're going to have wonky things that happen because you're just working all these things out. You want to prepare yourself to October. You're playing better football when you're peaking in late November into December into the playoffs. I'm very grateful for the win, and I take everything with a grain of salt because what happens now is not necessarily what's going to happen in 4 or 5 weeks.
For sure.
We talk about general statistics. Goff was 18 for 28 for 217, had a TD and a pick. Gibbs ran 11 times for 40 yards. He averaged 3.6 yards per carry, got a touchdown. He also added on 6 targets. He got 4 receptions for 34 yards. And then Demo just, dominated the overtime period. Very glad that he's on our team. A lot of people kind of forgot about him. Gibbs is the guy. We've been talking about Demo, and I'm glad that he's on our team. 17 carries for 91 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. Obviously touchdown, and caught 1 for 2 yards receiving. So
right.
Limited in the receiving, just like it was last year. But yeah, you want to speak on Demo?
Well, you didn't mention Jared Goff's rushing statistics. How could you forget that?
That is hilarious. You didn't see this, but they interviewed Zeitler today, and they said, were you confused that maybe Lamar Jackson was back behind you again?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I thought that was, whoever said that, I don't know what reporter said it. I wish I could give him credit because it was hilarious.
Yeah, right. Hey, it was a good run. Got a first down.
Jacob probably knows it about me. If I do like a long 5 or 6 thing parlay, I always throw in Goff for under 2 yards rushing to just kind of, because I know it's not going to happen.
To sweeten
I didn't
the pot.
do one this time. I didn't do one this time. And I was like, oh, I'd be so pissed if you got... I wouldn't be mad. I'd be so happy for the first time. But afterwards, I'd be like, oh, yeah, of course he rushes now.
Yeah, right. No. But, I mean, yeah. The offense as a whole, I mean, the statistics actually don't look terrible. That doesn't really show how the whole game went, though. Really, the offense was slow. They weren't clicking. we weren't doing enough. We really did the defense no favors because we were not holding on to the ball long enough, and they kept having to go out there. David Montgomery just refused to lose. He refused to walk out of there without the win in that overtime period. About half of those yards were gained on that overtime drive. And, the Rams defense was tired, and he just seemed, he was just hard to break, right? That's what they said. Dan Campbell said, we're hard to break.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think that's why you have this different dynamic in the backfield. One thing I will say, they're switching people out and people are like, oh, why are there long stretches without Demo? Why are there long stretches without Gibbs? In the overtime period was exactly why that is. Montgomery seemed fresh in that overtime period. Whereas if you got a back taking 25, 30 carries throughout that whole game, it's not going to seem fresh. Now, I know the offensive line was just doing their job, making Demo's job easier, but Demo also was making, after first contact, was making additional yards on that. So he was doing his job too, but the offensive line was giving the first 3 yards, and then Demo was just, taking it from there. As much as we want to see Gibbs on the field, as much as, as Monty's doing his job, there's a benefit for them to be splitting carries like this, along with being healthy. You got less chance of injury, you got more time to recover. And just that package of those two, Lightning and Thunder, it's a very good way of building the team. I'm really happy with this combination.
Yes. And it was really, really good in that overtime drive. The thing that kind of sucked about it is I feel like that's how most of the game should have gone, right? I feel like we should have been able to do that for the majority of the game. And it just, for whatever reason, wasn't happening. We're getting maybe 2 or 3 yards here. We're breaking out a little bit there. And then, it's just nothing clicked through until that overtime period.
Yeah, well, I think it was a battle of wills at that point. And I think once the Lions got rolling and once they got that first, carry, it was just like we had taken the will away from the Rams. That's just the way I felt, just being in the stadium.
Obviously, I'm not there. I can tell, you can hear the noise level reaching. Yeah. And then, that was when Montgomery broke that one off. Broke those tackles. They're trying to drag him down. It was like the 20-yard gain.
Yeah.
And you're right. Maybe I think that probably it was what broke their will, because then, we're just steamrolling them after that.
Right. Eventually got Gibbs in there to give Montgomery a breather, and then we just went right back to Montgomery, and he did his thing. The only thing that was going to stop us at that 1 yard line was, a screw up with the snap or anything like that. I knew that if they got the ball to Montgomery cleanly and we had 4 shots from the 1, they were not going to stop them. And the way the offensive line was going, and you saw that last play, Ragnow and Sewell just pushed their guys like 2 yards deep into the end zone, and Montgomery just, was able to batter his way through. There wasn't really much stopping him. So I felt like we just took the will of that team away. You made the argument, it was like we should have been doing that the whole game, right? And I think part of it is that we wore them down for that point. By the time they hit the overtime period, they're gassed because our guys have been hitting them and hitting them and hitting them. And that's what made it, easier. I'd like to see them break out a little bit earlier next time. But even at the end of the fourth quarter, our offense, got right down the field. So, it felt like we got down there real easier than the rest of the game. So I felt like we were the more conditioned team at that point.
I don't know who it was, but it was kind of the exclamation point. Whoever, I think it was Ragnow blocking. I don't know who the defender was, but it was like Demo was already pretty much in the end zone, but he was like, full speed ahead, just ran him over, just icing on the cake.
Yeah. No, it was a clinic, and that right side, you knew they were running right. You're right. You got Zeitler over there, you got Sewell, you got Ragnow, and I didn't think Zeitler necessarily played his best game yesterday. I noticed him whiff on a couple blocks, mostly in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
But he's getting used to those guys. But Ragnow and Sewell, and especially in that game, they just dominated, and it was like Detroit Lions football. The engine was roaring at that point. Let's talk about Amon-Ra. We have 3 catches on 6 targets for 13 yards. Are you worried about Amon-Ra, Jacob?
I'm not worried about Amon-Ra. It seems like maybe he wasn't that big of part of the game plan. They really seem to be pushing the ball to J-Mo. And I don't know, his deep touchdown that he had was against Tre'Davious White. sometimes they pick on one of the cornerbacks or they like the matchup. They see what they like. It seemed like they were trying to feed the ball to Jameson Williams. Obviously, he had the really long catch. He had some nice catches, and it just didn't seem, I texted you in the middle of the game too. Like we should be getting Amon-Ra the ball, and they weren't really doing it. And it seemed like when a couple of those targets were after Goff, kind of the first read wasn't there, he kind of went back to Amon-Ra. And that was when he threw the interception. He almost threw a second interception when Amon-Ra fell. It just didn't seem like he was, a focal point of the offense.
They asked Dan Gamble about that today, too, and he said that Amon-Ra was, and they called his number quite a few times, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. So, I'm not worried about Amon-Ra. He's the hardest worker. He's going to come back. It was just one of those games. I went back and watched the video on the JMO 52-yard touchdown, and that's called a mirror route. And if you look at that play, Amon-Ra's running the same thing that JMO is on the other side of the field. And I think JMO might have referenced it like whoever was more open was going to get the ball. Amon-Ra had beat his guy too. Not maybe by as much as JMO, but definitely had him by a yard at least. But the safety rotated over to help on Amon-Ra. So that took the safety off that side of the field. So that's why JMO was just wide open. I mean, he got held too on that play, and he was still 5 yards behind
Right.
The cornerback.
Kind of underthrown too, because he could have walked in there.
Well, I mean, if I'm Goff, they scored the touchdown. So it's
right.
Would I've liked it in stride? Yeah. To me, I'd rather have him make that catch than overshoot him. And then all of a sudden we didn't score anything. He kind of had to wait on it, and that caused him to have some contact going into the end zone, but we still scored. So I'm okay with all that.
Yeah.
JMO, talking about him, 5 catches on 6 targets, 121 yards of the TD. Just amazing. He's had a little less than 500 yards receiving before this game. So he almost had like 25%, increase in his receiving yards just from this one game, which was exactly what we wanted to see. It's what we talked about all, training camp and everything, how well he's looked. It was really nice to see him come out and just show his speed and, and just put that on tape, because now teams have to pay attention to that. And anytime you take focus away from Amon-Ra or Laporta or Gibbs or Montgomery, that's great. Just another weapon.
Exactly. No, you're right. We've talked about it all along. This is what we wanted. This is what we brought him here for. For him to execute like that in week 1 was awesome. And, maybe that does open up Amon-Ra more. I obviously didn't get to watch the replays and everything like that to see, up close whether they were paying extra attention to St. Brown, if that's what really took him out. But JMO having a game like this, he's definitely going to be on more teams' radar now. And, if they've got one safety on a play like that, he's going to have to think twice. He might get froze in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great play design. And just JMO that guy bit so hard and basically just grabbed him. I think Collinsworth said on the broadcast, you might as well just tackle him right there and just make a spot foul, because he was done. But, it was amazing how wide open he was. Going back to Amon-Ra, just because statistically he didn't have a good game, I will say that he had the best stiff arm in the game. He just wiped out the defender, but then he kind of got tackled pretty good too. The guy got him, squared him up pretty good, but Amon-Ra had an awesome, Derrick Henry-esque stiff arm. And also when he slipped and then still had the wherewithal to basically crawl and then knock down the ball so it didn't get intercepted, that was amazing.
Yeah, very, very good. Crucial play, because that would have been a killer if it would have happened again right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been a game ender for sure. Third quarter, again on offense, starts 3-and-out. We saw that a lot at the beginning of the year last year, but then we went on to score in the third quarter and had a pretty good drive.
Yep.
So we had 2 touchdown score lead. So it was nice to see them score in the third quarter. I would like them to just keep that momentum, especially after how we ended the half, with the interception. It would have been nice to just see them go down and score, and, right away, the momentum would have been even more in our favor. But I'm
Did
happy
you see, though, the possession time for the third quarter?
No,
I mean, do you have? I don't have it in front of me right now, but so the third quarter was when JMO scored that touchdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So outside of that, the first drive 3-and-out took 1:14. Our second drive, we scored the touchdown with J-Mo. The drive took 1:32.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Rams had that long drive. Then we come out there again. The drive takes 1:51, and we give it right back. We don't have the ball very long at all in the third quarter.
4.5, a third of the time.
So, I mean, outside of that one play, J-Mo is
If you
still...
ask Ben Johnson, though, he's going to be like, well, we scored that touchdown on
Right.
that long play.
Hey, no, that's all that matters for sure. Because, I mean, that could have been our long drive right there, but it didn't need to be. Got the job done.
You did get the job done. I mean, there are benefits to have a long drive and score a touchdown, but it's almost like if you're going to give a for sure touchdown like that, you're obviously not going to pass that up.
Before we switch to the defense, what were your thoughts on the interception that Jared Goff threw? Watching it live during the drive and everything, we're driving down, the energy's up high, and then it kind of just deflates really quick.
Yeah. He just missed him. He came back over. I think he thought there was single high safety. Didn't see the defender sitting there right next to Amon-Ra. I mean, it was amazing that he held onto that ball from in the stands. On the replay and the screen, it looked like it maybe have hit the ground. But when I watched the replay, I don't think it ever hit the ground. Amon-Ra did his best to just try to catch that ball. But yeah, it was not Goff's best game for sure. But for the most part, he held onto the ball and, took care of the ball. It was just that one was a throw I'm sure he wants back.
Yeah. It was, obviously an interception is always like worst case scenario outside of like, pick six or something like that. But especially, for what was going on in the game and what we were doing in that certain time. It's like, man, what are we doing? It was not a good throw. One of the, he drops back, he's looking around. Kind of a last resort. Amon-Ra's camping out right there. You're right. I don't think he saw him back there, or he just was feeling the pressure. He had to get rid of it really quick. And, Amon-Ra's kind of leaning the other way and is just not able to get to it as quick as their corner was. And, shouts out to him because it was not an easy catch to make. It wasn't an easy pick. I mean, he got his hand underneath there, definitely. I mean, you could see, obviously, when I'm watching at home on TV, it was a little bit more clear. His hands underneath the ball. It was a good pick.
Yeah, it's just a matter of him not seeing him, and I think,
trying to make something out of nothing.
Exactly. And it wasn't a matter of being pressured, I don't think, either. I think it was just, he just thought Amon-Ra was open and just missed him. We can kind of quickly mention Jake Bates. He's 2 for 2, 25-yarder and a 32-yarder. I know those are short, but the last one tied the game up, and so that was pressure-packed, so in my head before he makes this, I'm like, this could make or break. Talk radio all this week is going to be about Brad Holmes not getting another kicker if he misses this kick. That's the thoughts that's going through my head before he makes it, and he boomed it. It was easy kick when it was, pretty much right down the middle.
Were you nervous though when we started that drive? Because obviously it's in the back of all of our minds, especially how much we've been following the team and how much we've been inside, and we know maybe a certain level of inconsistency. And now here we go, week one, and potentially, we have the rookie trying to kick a field goal to send it in overtime. Obviously, it ended up being a closer one, which is, not as difficult. How were you feeling though?
When it was deeper, when we were not as close as we were, I was like, I know this is in his range, but I don't want to test it out this early.
Anywhere in Ford Field's in his range, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I went back to when we were interviewing Sheriff, the Rams podcaster from Rams Showcase. He basically said it's going to come down to the last team is going to kick a field goal, right? I mean, he said that, he called it,
right,
and it wasn't. So that was on my mind too. I'm like, darn it, he's right, And then we get down there, both had rookie kickers. Both made all their kicks. He quelled a lot of fears, I think, by making those kicks. Hopefully he continues doing that. I was glad for just his sake that he made those kicks. And then I was, also I had 2 young boys next to me, and I was really happy when he made that kick.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, the ride home, as long as we take care of business in overtime, the ride home will be good.
Most of the time it's hard to read, how NFL players are feeling or what they look like on the sidelines. It looks like Bates was nervous. They showed him a couple times, obviously, because, that's just what they do, no matter who the kicker is. Yeah. He looked nervous on the sideline, which made me a little more nervous.
Yeah. He slammed it through. He says that he quotes scripture before each kick to just kind of calm himself and, whatever, keep doing it because
Yeah.
he made those kicks. So
It worked.
I'm happy with it. All right. Let's get on to the defense here. The general overall thought, I've heard a lot of things. People are worried about this defense. I was encouraged by this defense. I just think Sean McVay knew what he had to do, and he had the quarterback to do it and the receiver to do it. Not all teams are going to have that combination, and I expect the Lions to grow. And I like what I saw from our secondary, even though we gave up, second most quarterback passing yards. We're recording this Monday night games going on. I'm not really paying attention to the stats there, but as of right now, it was the second most up to gave up like 317 yards to Stafford. But, you called it, that we were going to stop the running game, right? We stopped Kyron Williams. Those yards have got to come from somewhere. They basically de facto got Cooper Kupp out there, and that was their run game, the short passing game. And, those guys are really good and about breaking tackles, getting yards after catch. I will start out again as I started out on the offense. Our red zone defense was very good. 5 total drives, only 2 touchdowns and 1 field goal. There was a turnover and downs and an interception in that. So critical. When we talked about our keys to winning, that was the one thing I harped on. That was the difference in the playoff game last year. We held them to field goals, not touchdowns. We don't win this game if we don't intercept that ball down there, down in that end zone at the end of the half. And we're going to break down that whole drive because I think that that's critical to this game. I've rewatched that drive and looked at what happened play by play. The thought process of the Rams changed, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. As far as our defense on third down, I was really surprised by this statistics. They had 12 third downs, Jacob. How many first downs do you think that the Rams got out of 12? Because I could tell you that I didn't think that this was right, but this is what the statistic was.
6.
It was 5. And I was surprised by that because I felt like they were getting every third down. When I'm in the stadium, I'm like, they're getting every third down, because we're standing up screaming at the top of our lungs, and then it's really deflating in the stadium when they get the third down. It takes a little bit for the volume to get back up. And then as far as fourth down, they were 1 for 2, and they had 1 interception for the turnover, and they also had the turnover on downs. It's Jacob and I had this argument. We'll bring it up right here. They don't mark a turnover on downs as a turnover, even though it's right in the name, right? Turnover on downs. It should be counted as a turnover. You're giving the ball to the other team. I don't know why they don't consider it in the team statistics. All right, Jacob, who do you want to highlight first in the defense? Is there a player, or is there, a play, or how you want to break this one down?
Obviously there's a couple different guys worth mentioning that stood out. First, right away, Anzalone, definitely brought the heat. Had some huge hits, was stopping that outside game when they were trying to get those quick passes and quick shots out. I thought he played a really good game. And, Brian Branch really impressed me. He had quite a few, diving pass breakups, full extension diving out. I know the one he just missed the ball. I don't remember who caught that one, if it was Kupp or who. He just missed the ball, and they kind of got outside. But I think he hit every single other one that he went for. And, that's something that I see a lot, or I wonder a lot, I guess, is, you see these NFL players and you see these close passes. It's like, why didn't he just dive in front of that ball? If he knows that, he's got safety help or something, why didn't that corner dive or make an effort to stop the ball from getting? And Branch was going all out trying to stop the ball. So I was really impressed by his play. What about you? Who stood out to you?
Well, obviously Alex was amazing. So he had 3 tackles for loss in the game. 2 were on the very first drive.
Right.
He started the game right off with it. We made them go 3 and out. 2 of the 3 plays were Alex Anzalone just getting him tackles for loss. Just put it in perspective. Alex Anzalone had 7 tackles for loss all of last year.
Yeah.
So he's almost halfway there from this year just in the first game. His game has improved from year to year. his first year with the Lions was not very impressive. They basically have him playing out of position at middle linebacker. He has more versatility, and he looks like just like a totally different player. As far as Brian Branch, it was an enigma to me because he had some missed tackles, which I found was really interesting. He's actually in the bottom 5 on the PFF graded.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you. Like, he made some plays. I think he gets downgraded because he dropped that interception. Like, that was one that was right over the middle. He could have came down with that. Like you said, he almost picked six that ball that was caught on the sidelines. In the stadium, I have a different view than you, and I'm sitting up top. I'm in the second level, so I have a good bird's eye view, and I could see it happening. You're just anticipating this, but he'll get his chance on those. Brian Branch will learn from this, and I still was very instinctive, had the tackle for a loss. He is perfect for that safety position. I could see what they're using him for. He's all over the field, and he can use his instincts. This is his first time playing full safety for, the game. Of course, we're going to have some issues. If you look back on, on that 63-yard play that they had is at the end of the third quarter, it's like basically that short route. They were on like the 12-yard line. That was their long play that Rams had, that 63-yarder. Lots of missed tackles. Well, if you look at that, Brian Branch goes to the outside towards the sidelines, and he cuts up middle. If Brian Branch would have pushed him towards the sidelines, he would have never got to where he's at. So I think part of it is Brian Branch over pursuit.
Who had coverage on that play?
It was Carlton Davis. He was just out of position, and then Brian Branch looked way out of position. And then, like I said, there was missed tackles up the field, and then, that gave them that 60 yards.
Was that the longest play they had, right?
It was the longest play, and it was a short pass. I mean, it was like a 5-yard pass, and it turned into 63 yards because they were not really chucking it deep at all because Stafford didn't have time to do that. I think the longest pass
he had in the air was that one to Cooper Kupp on the sideline. It was a hell of a catch.
Yeah, that was from our perspective in the stand. They they fast played it, and we thought for sure that he looked way out of bounds. And I asked you, text you, I'm like, did he catch that? Because the play went so fast, they didn't even show a replay in the stadium. Yeah. And so I had no clue. But, we're all screaming to throw the challenge flag because it just looked so obvious from, my vantage point. But
wow, yeah.
No, he double tapped his toes. He really got like 3 foot.
Yeah, it was a nice catch.
It was a heck of a catch. It was amazing. Obviously, Hutch, you mentioned him earlier, 11 pressures. He had the highest PFF grade. I didn't get to see all the holding and the face mask and stuff like that. You saw it at home. You thought it was egregious. I didn't get to see it as much in the stadium. I did watch the replay. You showed, actually in the stadium, you showed me the one where he got face masked on the goal line. That was bad. Real bad. That should have been called.
Well, and the thing about that, too, which is worse, is that they called a holding penalty. So they actually did throw the flag that time, but they called a hold. So if you see that, you have to see the face mask. That's really weird. How do you make that call? Because it wasn't a hold, but you threw the flag and called it a hold.
Yeah, it was really, really bad. I think Hutchinson doesn't help his case because he's always flailing his arms and everything like that. I don't think he really helps his case so much, for some of that stuff, because I think he's trying to garner a call and he doesn't seem to get them, but it's very obvious that he's being held on some of these plays. I don't want to get into a thing where we're complaining about referees. That's not what this is about. But, getting a face mask like that, I mean, I don't know how much more obvious you get than that.
He got tripped a few times, too. Did you see that in the replays?
I did not see that. I just did the condensed replay, so I didn't do any film study on it yet, other than a few select plays that I wanted to, talk about, for the podcast. Yeah, I know you mentioned about him getting tripped and stuff like that.
They only showed the replay of it once, the actual broadcast, but it was, it is what it is. These are the Rams' backup offensive linemen, and they lost more offensive linemen when they start the game.
I was also impressed with Davenport with his.
Yes,
he is so strong, and I know Levi got the sack on that play, and he had basically they just like destroyed the left. Yeah, the half sack. They split it up because they originally gave it to Levi. I looked today. That's what I was about to mention. They split it up, so they gave Davenport half and Levi a half. They both deserved it because Davenport just crushed that side of the line, and then Levi comes screaming up, beat his man, and just he basically beat Davenport to him, while Davenport's pushing the lineman right into Stafford.
Honestly, the Rams, like for what it was, they had the perfect game plan. They put him in motion. They see, are they playing zone or are they playing man this time? And I think they're looking, okay, where's Cooper? Where's Puka? Where's our first read? And, where's the check down going to be? And you're right. I know you said that earlier, but I mean, they have the quarterback. They had the players to pull something off like that because Stafford also knows where it's going, what's happening. Stafford in his head knows plan A, B, and C. And, for him to be able to execute like he did in 2.6 seconds on average, they played a really good game. For what they had, they did a really good job.
Yeah, and I know Stafford had some pretty amazing throws that just, there's not very many quarterbacks.
He hit us with a no look.
Yeah, he hit us. I was going to say that play, when I watched that on replay, was just, I don't get that in the stadium. I don't really see that part of it. I could see that the pressure is bearing down on him and then it gets a completion. But on the replay, it was amazing that he completed that. And it was like perfect. It was a perfect pass. There's not as many quarterbacks can make that type of throw. And for Stafford, how deflating is it that you went into this place twice in a place I know he desperately wants to win. And he just plays, really good games, and he just, comes out in the losing end. So I'm glad that we're on the winning end of that. But for him, it's got to be
demoralizing. Yeah.
Someone asked him, Carlos, one of the writers, I think he writes for the Free Press. He asked him, he's like, are you over the Jared Goff chance? And, Stafford, didn't really appreciate the question. And, he's like, basically, yeah, I'm tired of it.
Why would you ask? I don't know if he's just trying to get a rise out of him or.
Well, I think Carlos, if you read his stuff, is very I want to say trolly and
that makes sense.
So I think he has that reputation, and I think you can ask that question, but not after you just lose. You're never going to get a good response, right? I mean, that's just
right.
I don't know.
No, there was no good outcome there.
No. What about Terrion? What'd you think of Terrion? That's, obviously rookie first game. What'd you think of him?
I liked what I saw out of Terrion. I know, obviously, he had those 2 pass interference penalties, which really didn't help our case. I thought the first one was kind of a little on the fence about whether that was actually pass interference or not. The second one, definitely, he's not turn around. He kind of smacks his hand away. The second one was definitely worse than the first one. First one was maybe debatable, but, they called it. Those are some growing pains. But, as a rookie cornerback for his first game, I thought he did a heck of a job.
I think he was great in the run game. His tackling, even so Bradley, my 9-year-old, comes over. He's like, he is a really good tackler. And there was multiple times that he was, he was bringing his man down. And even in the run game, he was coming up and making his presence felt. Like that Carlton Davis did the same thing too.
Right.
Made his presence felt in that run game, which is, what the Lions are about, grit. Those guys come in and the Lions expect that from their corners. And that's why our run defense is so good, because those guys will come in and do their job. So I was impressed with our corners. I thought there was the 4th down play that Cooper Kupp dropped that pass. I know he could have caught that, and I know Carlton Davis didn't get his hand on the ball, but he was really sticky in those coverage and made that throw be out where it was, make it harder for Cooper. So I don't think Cam Sutton makes that play last year, is right next to him like that. So I was happy with CD. I thought that he played a pretty good game outside of that dropped interception rate.
That could have been huge, but it would have robbed us of that overtime drive. So, it worked out in the end.
I know. Oh, man, how sweet it would have been to have a Stafford pick right there. And think about this, we would have got it right around the 40-yard line. That could have lined up Bates for this monster kick to win it. Oh, that would have been.
That's a good story.
Yeah, that would have been crazy. And then if he misses it, we're still tied and we're going to overtime. We dominated anyways. Anything else on defense before I get to this drive breakdown? Is there any other player you want to highlight or any thoughts that you have?
Someone that we talked about before, I kind of wanted to see how Levi looked, and I liked what I saw. He was getting pressure like he was supposed to. For stepping into the DJ Reader role, I guess, he's trying to carve out his own role here too. And I thought he did a really good job. Didn't see a whole lot out of Aleem. Back to the whole replay thing. A lot of what Aleem does is not something that you're going to look at a stat sheet and say, whether or not he had a good game. So I have not seen. When you were looking at the replays, did you see anything out of Aleem?
I didn't. I mean, they held the run game in check. That's big time Aleem, especially with DJ Reader out. I think it's going to be hard to evaluate the defensive line on any of this because they were getting the ball out so fast, and especially those interior guys didn't have any time to like generate, sacks or anything like that. And we basically shut down their run game. However, Levi did have that pressure. I felt like obviously we got pressure because they would not have had to get rid of it in 2.6 seconds if we were not getting pressure, right? I mean, if they were learning, like if they started out at 2.6 seconds, but then learning that we weren't getting in there, they're going to extend that and start doing some deep shots. Or, they didn't even try play action pass. I don't remember seeing a play action pass, to be honest with you.
There was no time for a play action. And
to me, that tells me that they respected our line and the line was doing what it was supposed to do. It's week 1. We don't have don't have a history. Of course, the stats aren't there to back it up. My feeling is, based on how the game went, I'm happy with the way the line plays. We'll reassess it as we get more information, more games, and all that stuff. And we get DJ Reader in here, who's going to be a huge difference maker here. Hopefully, this upcoming week we get him. All those things are going to add up
for sure. I mean, obviously the passing yardage that you see doesn't look like the defense, had a great game, but I'm okay. I think that they did a good job. I just think the Rams had a good game plan, and they, for the most part, executed the way that they wanted to.
Yeah, I'm not a house is burning down type guy, especially in week 1. We won the game. So honestly, that's number 1. We won the game. Everyone's going to feel better about everything, but I'm not worried about this defense. We'll see. We'll reassess, like I said.
It's a long season, but it's a good start.
So I just want to talk about the drive right before the half. I just want to quickly, I'm not going to it's not going to be like a lengthy review. I just want to quickly go through this because if this drive doesn't break down the way it is, I don't think we win this game. I think this was crucial. So we're talking about the drive right before half. The Rams get the ball with 1:57 left. So when they got the ball, I think their first inclination is to just run the clock out. The first play got 3 yards. They ran the clock all the way down to 1:15. And then that's Davenport jumps off sides. They run again. They get a first down. It gets to 55 seconds. They throw an incomplete pass. The time stops. On the next incomplete pass, that's when Hutchinson was hit with that roughing the passer because he hit Stafford too low. It was that's a penalty. That really, do I think Hutchinson intended to do that? No, but it's a penalty. You can't hit a quarterback in the knees like that. It looks like Stafford's backpedaling. Hutch is just landing, and that's just where he happened to land. Hit a moving target, gave him the yardage. Then Colby Parkinson had a big gain. There was another 8-yard play. Kupp got a first down. They're, first and goal at the 8. Stafford throws one out the outside the back of the end zone. 21 seconds left. Throws it basically in the same spot, but this time Kirby's there and just takes him down. Just takes the pick down. And I was so happy for Kirby that he knelt it down because Kirby's usually so happy with that. He could have ran out. We got tackled at the 2, and then all of a sudden we got a different problem where we're, worried about a safety or something like that. So I was just happy he knelt it and we got out of there.
Definitely. Massive, monumental play towards the end of the drive, kind of take the wind out of them right before we go into the half. Twitter thinks that interception is because our uniforms match the end zone in the back of the wall so well. And based on Stafford's reaction afterward, he's a little bit aggravated, he's a little bit upset. Stafford actually did, though. I mean, he looked shocked for a minute. He just, how did that happen? Where did he come from?
Well, also, it could be that he called Kirby Joseph a dirty player at the end of last year, and then it was Kirby Joseph that intercepted him. So, might have been some of that too. But I saw that, and, on the replay, it is. The end zone's also that color, so, obviously it's going to match the uniform, but it matched it so perfectly that, he kind of just blended in. And
right.
It was like Stafford didn't see him because, Kirby was right there. It wasn't like he was shooting across the field. He was pretty much standing there. Kirby had no responsibility on that. So basically he's playing center field at that point and just, either baited Stafford into it or just,
Maybe. I mean,
it just happened.
and it wasn't like that was their last chance. I mean, Stafford could have just chucked it out the back of the end zone if he was feeling pressure or something like that. I mean, he just seemed like he didn't see him or something.
I just wanted to break that down because it looked like the Rams were just going to be content with running out the clock. I think they also didn't want to give the ball back to the Lions right before the half.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. I do not like when, obviously Aaron Rodgers is notorious for it. I do not like when the quarterback in the middle of being tackled or like in the middle, because, there were a couple of close calls after that too, but it's like before, it's like Stafford, as soon as he's on the ground, he's rolling around looking at the referee, yelling at him, pointing at him like to throw the flag.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I mean, that by rule is roughing the passer. You're not supposed to go low. Stafford's ankle, I think, was already banged up at that point, right?
I mean, Stafford's like pointing at his knee while he's getting tackled.
Yeah, right. Real quick, though, because we didn't mention this earlier, but, because we talked about offense, defense, we talked about Jake Bates. Jack Fox, special teams, he had a couple really nice punts. And the one outside of Ennis Rakestraw being a little too, like, I don't know if he's just running too fast or what was going on. Like, why? I didn't look at the replay of that, but live, it was like, what are you doing, man? It just was like, I don't know. He just didn't, he got there too quick. I don't know what he was expecting.
I don't know what happened because the momentum of the ball was away from the goal line.
The punt was perfect.
Yeah, he basically rolled into the ball and pushed it into the end zone. So I think as a rookie, just being overzealous is how I took it.
Yeah.
First game, because that would have been awesome to get it down at, like, it would have been, the ball was out around the 3-yard line, 2 or 3 yard line when I watched the replay. So it wouldn't have been on the 1, but I mean, darn close, right? And we've been stopping the run game. So,
and the pressure we're bringing
it would have been nice. You're right. Jack Fox, worth every penny that we're paying him. He does amazing things. So I'm happy that he's on our team.
For sure.
One thing that we want to do before we get out of here is we had great guarantees from the last episode. We're going to review those. We want to give props where props are due and take them away where they're not due. So first, we're going to start out with you, Jacob. Your prediction was that Kyron Williams would be held under 80 yards. Nice job. Man,
that's what I thought.
Way under 80 yards. They did what they needed to do there.
That was the betting line that I saw, and I should have put money on that.
I'm glad you didn't, because it would have probably the karma would have changed. So don't do that. Mine was 2 picks, with one being a pick 6. Could have had 2 picks because Carlton Davis and Branch both dropped one.
Right.
Along with the one that Kirby Joseph did have. And I know I didn't win this, so I'm not going to make the argument, but I'm going to make the argument that taking it in the red zone is almost as good as a pick 6, because we took 7 points off the board, a potential 7 points off the board for them. I know it's not the same. I'm not arguing that I won, but I'm just saying it was a very important pick. Yeah, out of the two of us, obviously I was further out on the limb than you, and I'm not saying that you should have been. That's not a judgment on my part. I'm just saying, obviously mine was harder to get than yours, but you were right, and so now I'm going to learn.
It was week 1, I had to see how I wanted to play this thing.
Dude, I was jacked for doing this review podcast. I mean, luckily I had a lot of time to look at film and stuff throughout the day. I think it made for a better podcast episode.
For sure.
I like that you and I have different viewing angles on these home games. I think I bring something from seeing in the stadium perspective. And then, and like you said, if we have a good thing going where we're texting back and forth in the game, and don't think that I'm texting Jacob during a play. I am texting Jacob, when there's a break, and just like he's doing the same for me. We're fully invested in this thing. We started that last year, right? We got a good thing going, and I can ease your fears on.
Sometimes you like to
injuries.
mess with me. Sometimes you like to mess with me, or like he'll send me. It'll just say yes or something. He knows that he's seeing it a minute or two ahead of time. So then I'm looking at the TV like, what's about to happen? Somebody got to score. What's going on?
Speaking of, this is funny. This happened in the game. Speaking of seeing things ahead of time, we're so used to, the streaming delay or whatever like that. I had my phone out and I was telling Preston, I was like, oh man, we lost yards on the next play. And Preston's like, I don't want to be ruined. And I'm like, dude, we're watching the game live. There's no way. and on my head, but it was just funny that the initial thought was that I spoiled it for him, and then he had to remind that, yes, we are, at the live event.
We're the first ones finding out.
Yeah. So that was a fun trick that I played on Preston. My boys got to see their first fight in a game. The couple people in front of us were jawing back and forth. And it was over like some guy standing.
Were they both Lions fans?
They were all Lions fans.
Wow,
yeah, there was no
look.
Rams. The Rams fans that were sitting behind us were very disrespectful. And when we got down to the 1 yard line, they walked out.
Of course
they walked out before we even scored the touchdown. But like before, they were crapping on all our players, like Goff and like all this stuff. And so much so that the guy that was sitting next to my wife Sarah was like, "Hey guys, we're gonna be respectful to you. Don't be this way, But anyways, to get back, the guy in front of us, he's standing up with 3 minutes left. He's the only guy in the section standing up, and there was like a shorter gentleman in front of me. So he just taps the guy on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey man, can you just sit down?" There was no one standing in front of the guy. So like his view was like perfectly in line. And it wasn't like even a huge play. It was like a second down play or something like that. And then, they had like some words and then friends get involved. There's alcohol involved. And then all of a sudden, like the guy that's sitting 2 sections over starts jawing. He's like, "Let's meet outside." And meanwhile, Preston's like, "What is going on?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it. It's just people jawing." And then all of a sudden, I have a mom that's next to me, like not my mom, but a mom next to me. And all of a sudden, she just chimes in and she goes, "There's kids down here. You need to shut your mouth." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is insane." Meanwhile, afterwards, Sarah's like got the number in the phone you can call, if
right, for unruly fans
She's like, she like has this number. She tells me, I don't know that she's doing this, but she has this going in. Because she's like a worry that someone's just going to get pushed. She wasn't worried that we were going to get involved directly. It was just worried that
someone's going to get hurt.
Dumb. But, it was just an interesting thing. So we get back to the car, right? And the Lions just had an awesome victory, right? They overtime. First thing the boys talked about, that fight. They're like, "Dad, who was they?" My oldest wants to rank everything. And he didn't say rank the people, but he was like, "Dad, who are you most scared of all the guys?" So it was hilarious. And, and the boys just got their first, our last section that we were in last year was pretty normal. I think the combination of this being late night week 1, that people had been
prime time
drinking all day, because it was a late game instead of a 1 o'clock game. And so I think people were more primed for, controversy, and the Lions being down at that time probably, made it worse. So, look forward to doing this in a couple days. Thursday, we're going to have our Tampa Bay Week 2 preview. We have a podcaster from Tampa. We really liked last week, how last week went. Kind of doing the same thing. We're going to interview a Tampa Bay podcaster and just get insights from their team. Tampa Bay is going to be dealing with a couple injuries, huge injuries. So that'll be interesting talk that when we have with them. So that'll be out on Thursday. So anything else you want to add, Jacob?
No.
All right. Well, for Jacob, I'm Jason. I'm going to edit this thing. Jacob's going to go to sleep and, go Lions.